Look, I'm going to tell you about the exact day I made my decision. It was a Sunday in February. It was that dry Chicago cold that gets right into your bones and stays there. My grandson Tyler, 27 years old, college graduate with a master's degree that I partly paid for the record, had spent 20 minutes explaining to me, with a patience that sounded more like condescension than affection, why my opinions were dangerous. Dangerous. Mine. The opinions of a 103-year-old woman who has lived through the Great Depression, World War II, the Civil Rights Movement, the Cold War, and more changes than any of them will ever be able to imagine. Dangerous, he said, and he just kept right on eating the pot roast I had made. And me, someone who has stuck to her guns my whole life, who isn't a woman for drama or slamming doors, who learned a long time ago that the most important truths are spoken quietly and without a fuss. That Sunday, I got up from the table, picked up my purse, buttoned my coat, and left. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't say goodbye. And on the way home, walking down the same sidewalk with the pavement I've known for 50 years, I thought, I'm done. Today I'm going to tell you why I made that decision, and why, after 2 years, I don't regret it. Oh, and before I forget, because at my age, memory isn't what it used to be. If what I'm sharing here helps you at all, subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost a thing, and it helps me keep sharing, because as long as I can speak, I have things to say. So look, I need to explain how I got to that Sunday, because family rifts don't happen overnight. They simmer for months, for years. And when they finally boil over, outsiders are surprised. But you've known for a long time that it was inevitable. My kids, I have 3, are good people. I don't just say that. Hard-working folks who raise their own kids, pay their taxes, and don't hurt anyone. But at some point, it was gradual, like the things that are hardest to see always are. They started bringing something to our family gatherings that was never there before. A rule book, not a physical rule book, of course, but an invisible list of what you can and cannot say, which words are allowed and which ones we don't use anymore, which opinions are respectable and which ones are problematic, when you're being a decent person, and when, without even realizing it, you've become the enemy. And the funny thing is, the ones bringing that rule book were the same ones who talked the most about open-mindedness, about tolerance, about respecting all ways of thinking. Except mine, of course. I'm not a radical. I never have been. I'm a woman who has seen a lot, who has fully formed ideas, who gives her opinion when asked and sometimes when not asked, who has changed her mind about many things over the course of 103 years, and who stands firm on others because she has solid reasons too. Lived reasons, not things read in an online article at 11 o'clock at night. But I started to notice that at Sunday dinners, whenever I opened my mouth to say something that wasn't in that rule book, there would be a silence. One of those heavy silences, the kind you could cut with a knife. And then someone would chime in, almost always Tyler, or his mother, my daughter-in-law Christine, who is very smart and well-intentioned, but has a self-assurance that sometimes borders on arrogance. And they would explain things to me. They would explain things to me. The thing is, there were 3 moments that stuck with me. 3 moments that, looking back now, I see as the 3 red flags I should have paid attention to earlier. The first was on New Year's Eve, 2 years before that February Sunday. We were getting ready for the midnight toast and pouring the champagne, and I made a comment, just one, about something I had seen on the news that week. An opinion of mine, formed, reasoned, just like the ones I've always had. My daughter Sarah looked at me with a face I had never seen on her before. It wasn't anger, it was worse. It was embarrassment, as if what I had said was something she had to apologize for in front of everyone, as if I were an antique vase that had shattered on the floor at the worst possible moment. Anyway, I kept quiet. I picked up my glass of champagne, which that year was a very good one from Napa Valley that Michael brought over, and didn't say another word until dessert was served. The second moment was in the summer, a family get-together at my son David's house. He has a nice place out in the suburbs with a yard and a pool. We were sitting in the shade of a huge pine tree that gives a thick, deep shade, smelling of pine needles and hot earth, the way they do when it's really sweltering out. And my granddaughter Chloe, 18 years old, a college freshman, armed with all the brand new ideas of someone who just figured out the world is unfair, asked me what I thought about some political issue or another. I answered her, honestly, respectfully, telling her what I had lived through, what I had seen change, what I valued, and what sometimes gave me doubts. And Chloe looked at me with that look 18-year-olds get when they think they've figured out the whole world after one semester of college, and said, "Grandma, what you're saying is a little old school." Old school? Me? Who is old school in the most literal sense possible? Carved from the same wood as the centuries. Who has seen ideas born and die that they haven't even had time to learn about yet? I didn't say anything. I took a sip of water. I smiled. And I kept my feelings to myself until I got back to my apartment, took off my shoes. He sat down in my usual armchair and let it pass. The third moment was with Tyler, that Sunday in February, the "your opinions are dangerous" moment. And that's when my patience ran out. It has a limit too, even if it took me 103 years to find it. When Peggy, who has been my friend since we were neighbors in Brooklyn, 40 years at least, found out I had walked out of that dinner and said I wasn't going back, her jaw dropped. She told me, "But Margaret, they're your family." As if that explained everything, as if sharing a last name were a binding contract that forces you to keep your mouth shut and smile indefinitely. She told me I was exaggerating, that they're young, that this is just how young people are today, that you have to be patient. And that phrase, "you have to be patient," everyone said it to me. My son David told me that over the phone. My son-in-law hinted at it in a text. Even Connie, my neighbor on the 3rd floor, said it to me in that soft voice she uses when she doesn't want me to get mad. You have to be patient. The exact same patience they never had with me. If you've made it this far, it's because this sounds familiar, because you've lived it too. Or you're living it right now, or you have someone in your own house explaining the world to you as if you hadn't already seen it for yourself. Stick around, because what comes next is the part nobody tells you about. So look, now I'm going to tell you what happened after that Sunday, because it would be really easy to tell you that I made my decision, didn't lose a wink of sleep over it, and everything was peachy. No, truly good things are never that simple. And there were consequences. The bad stuff first, because that's how I operate. There were Thanksgivings without seeing them. There was my youngest granddaughter's birthday party that I didn't attend. There was Sarah's surgery, a minor knee thing. It went fine, where I wasn't there at the hospital. That hurt. For the record, that hurt. I'm not made of stone, and I don't pretend to be. There are nights when the silence of the phone weighs heavier than the noise of all those dinners combined. And there are moments, especially in winter, when the afternoon fades early and the light disappears behind the buildings across the street, when you ask yourself if maybe it was too much, if maybe it would have been worth it to just put up with it a little longer. In those moments, I remember Tyler calling me dangerous with his fork in his hand. And the feeling passes. But there were good things too, and these are the ones nobody expects to hear. Number 1, I got my Sundays back. That might sound silly. It's nothing to sneeze at. Sunday was the day of the week that weighed on me the most. It came loaded with tension. It left me more exhausted than rested. And suddenly, without those dinners, Sunday was mine again. I get up when I want. I eat whatever I feel like having. At 4 p.m, I sit down to read or watch a movie or just stare out the window without having to answer to anybody. And that, at this stage in the game, is worth more than it seems. Number 2, I started actually talking to Connie. My neighbor on the 3rd floor has been dealing with a similar situation with her family for years, though she hasn't had the nerve to take the leap yet. And those conversations, sitting in her kitchen with coffee and sometimes a little brandy she keeps hidden in the back of the cabinet because otherwise her daughter tells her she shouldn't have it, have taught me more about myself than years of forced silence at dinner. And number 3, and this is the one that surprised me the most, some of my kids over time have started listening to me differently. Not all of them, not always, but there's something about saying enough is enough that changed the dynamic. As if suddenly they realized I'm not a piece of furniture sitting in the corner, just taking whatever you throw at it. Because here is the most important thing I learned. It wasn't about them. It was about me. I learned that for years I had been confusing love with the obligation to keep my mouth shut. And those are very different things. Real love, healthy love, the kind that lasts, the kind I've seen work for decades, doesn't demand that you give up who you are. It doesn't ask you to apologize for your ideas. It doesn't treat you like a logistical issue that needs to be managed. Love lets you be. There's a very specific contradiction that took me a while to articulate, but once I figured it out, it seemed crystal clear. My family members, the ones who told me I was dangerous, that I was wrong, that I needed to get with the times, are the exact same ones who, in any other conversation, will talk your ear off about everyone's right to think whatever they want, about respecting differences, about the importance of listening to diverse voices, about how you can't judge anyone for their beliefs. Oh, you better believe it. And yet, with me. And the first thing they did was judge me, correct me, silence me with that condescending patience that is just the most elegant way of telling someone their ideas are worthless. that their mind, after over a century of thinking and reading and living and making mistakes and learning, no longer produces anything worth listening to. I'm not saying this to attack them. I'm saying it because it's important to understand it. Because that contradiction, preaching tolerance while practicing constant moral judgment against anyone who thinks differently, isn't exclusive to my family. It's happening in a lot of houses, at a lot of tables, over a lot of Sunday pot roasts and tense silences. And the ones who suffer from it the most, almost always, are older women. Because we're supposed to be the ones keeping the family together. The ones who smooth things over, the ones who compromise, the ones who just grin and bear it, as if our only function were to act as the cement filling in the cracks everyone else creates. I have grinned and borne a lot of things in my life, hard years, loss, the fears you don't talk about but carry around all the same. I've swallowed all of that and just kept marching forward, but I do not have to put up with being treated as if my mind, after more than 100 years of thinking, is suddenly some dangerous thing that needs to be corrected. No way. And I say the exact same thing to you ladies. You have every right in the world to have your own ideas, to speak them, to defend them, to not ask permission from anyone, not your kids, not your grandkids, not some invisible rule book somebody decided is the official truth, to keep being exactly who you are. Experience is hard to argue with. When someone who has lived over 100 years says, "I've seen this before," they're right almost every time. And that is incredibly uncomfortable for someone who just discovered the world and thinks they invented it. Truth be told, there are people in this world for whom tolerance is a universal principle that applies to absolutely everyone, except older people who think differently, except grandmothers who refuse to be corrected, except women who carry an entire lifetime on their shoulders and have no intention of pretending they've forgotten it. There is no age limit on demanding respect. There is no expiration date on dignity. Anyway, it's been 2 years since that Sunday in February, since I buttoned my coat, grabbed my purse, and walked out without saying goodbye. Things aren't totally resolved. I'd be lying to you if I said they were. There's still tension. There are conversations that need to be had. There are things Sarah and I haven't said out loud. Things we both know are sitting right there and will have to be brought out into the open someday. But something has changed. Something small, but real. Last month, Tyler, the same Tyler of the "Your Opinions Are Dangerous" comment, called me on a Saturday morning for no special reason, just to see how I was doing. We talked for 20 minutes. He asked about what I was reading, since he knows I read a lot. I told him about a book I'd finished that week. He listened to me. He didn't correct me. He didn't explain anything to me. He just listened. I don't know if that's the beginning of something new or if it was just a weird Saturday. Life teaches you not to get your hopes up too high, but it also teaches you not to brush off the small gestures. Go figure. At this stage, at 103 years old, still finding new things. So what about you ladies? Have you ever found yourself sitting at that table with someone from your own family looking at you like your ideas are a problem to be solved? Or have you already made a decision like mine to say enough and see what happens? Let me know down below in the comments. I read everything you post, you know that. At 103, I've got plenty of time for it. And I like knowing I'm not the only one who has had to put up with the intolerance of the tolerant.